Where are your parents?
7 blocks. That was the math. 7 blocks between the hospital and her front door, and Maya had been doing this math for 3 weeks, knowing it, running it, adjusting it for weather and time of day and how far along the contractions were. She knew this route the way she knew her own name. Left on Halstead, right on Dickens, past the shuttered dry cleaner, past the corner store with the broken awning, 7 blocks. Manageable, she had this. Then her water broke. She stopped walking, pressed one hand flat against her stomach, looked down at the sidewalk like it had done something personal. All right, she thought. All right. New math. The blizzard didn't care. The wind off the lake kept deciding things. Which direction the snow fell, which direction people didn't walk, which sounds it swallowed whole. It swallowed the sound of traffic. It swallowed the sound of her own breathing. It pushed against her from 3 directions at once like it was testing whether she would move. She didn't move. She stood on the sidewalk in the whiteout and she timed the last contraction. For minutes ago, manageable, the next one wasn't here yet. And she did the new math. 7 blocks. Wet clothes. February in Chicago. Baby coming faster now, but not right now. Not yet. She could do 7 blocks. She had done harder things than 7 blocks in worse conditions than this on days when far less was at stake. She started walking. She heard him before she saw him. A sound that almost wasn't one, barely cutting through the wind, already half swallowed. The kind of sound that the rational part of your brain classifies as nothing and files away. Wind through a gap. Ice shifting. Nothing. But the other part, the part that doesn't argue, the part that just knows, turned her head. An alley. Narrow. Wedged between 2 shuttered storefronts. Dark except for the gray light the snow threw back at everything. She almost kept walking. 7 blocks, said the rational part. Contractions every 4 minutes. You have a daughter to get home to. She turned into the alley. He was face down. One arm stretched ahead of him like he'd been crawling towards something and simply run out of everything. His school uniform was built for a heated classroom. Blazer, dress shirt. Completely wrong. Devastatingly wrong. And the snow had already begun to fill the space around his body the way it fills around anything that has stopped moving. Maya dropped to her knees and pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse. Faint. There. She rolled him carefully onto his side. His face was slack, eyes half open, seeing nothing. His lips were the color of a bruise, not the dramatic bruise color of someone who had been hit, but the specific blue-gray of a body quietly redirecting blood away from the edges, away from the parts it has decided it can no longer afford. She had been an immigration consultant for 3 years. She had sat across from people in the worst moments of their lives and helped them build cases and fill forms and prove to systems designed to doubt them that they deserved to exist in the spaces they'd chosen. She knew how to read a situation. She knew how to assess what was salvageable and what wasn't. This was salvageable, but not for long. She pulled off her coat and wrapped it around him. The cold hit her through her sweater like a punishment, immediate, absolute, deeply uninterested in her circumstances. She registered it, filed it, kept moving. She pulled out her phone, dialed. 911. What's your emergency? I need an ambulance. She gave the address. Clean, no wasted syllables. I have a boy, approximately 13, hypothermic. He's in an alley off Dickens. Semi-conscious. He needs to go first. Ma'am, are you safe? Are you? I'm safe. He is not. Send the ambulance. Hurry. She tucked the phone into his blazer pocket, close to his face, close to his breathing, so the operator could hear them both, and she pulled him against her chest and locked her arms around his back. His breathing was wrong. Too slow. Too shallow. The specific rhythm of a body spending its last reserves. I hear you, she thought. I'm not going anywhere. The contraction arrived without warning. It came from the base of her spine and spread forward and upward, and it was bigger than the last one. Significantly bigger, the kind that doesn't ask permission, the kind that requires everything she had. She found a brick in the wall across the alley. One specific brick, darker red than the rest, slightly raised at one corner. She fixed her eyes on it and breathed in through her nose, slow, deliberate, and out through her mouth, and she did not make a single sound. For seconds, 7, 11, it passed. The boy's hand moved, just slightly, his fingers curling against her arm like something involuntary, like a reflex that hadn't received the message, yet that movement was expensive. "I know," she said. Her voice came out quiet and steady, and she was proud of that, and she knew pride was completely wrong, and she didn't have time for it. "You're not alone. I've got you." Somewhere in the space between conscious and gone, he heard her. He didn't know her name. He didn't know anything about her. He just knew someone was there, and that the warmth was real, and that the voice hadn't left. He held on to all three of those things with everything he had left. The operator's voice came from his pocket. "Ma'am, can you still hear me?" "Yes." His breathing is shallow but present. Heart rate is weak. He responded to touch approximately 2 minutes ago. "Help is 4 minutes out. Can I ask, is there anything else I should know about your situation?" Maya looked at the boy, at the frost already thawing on his eyelashes from her body heat, at his lips, slightly less blue now, marginally, but she was watching for it, and it was there. She thought about what would happen if she answered that question honestly. They would prioritize her. Protocol demanded it. A woman in active labor, water already broken, contractions tightening. She would become the emergency, and the boy in her arms would become the secondary concern. And there were things that could happen in the gap between primary and secondary that she was not willing to risk. "No," she said. "Everything's fine. Please just hurry." She ended the transmission, left the phone in his pocket, and held him. "If you're still here, you already know this story isn't about the snow. It's about the turn. The moment she could have kept walking and didn't. If you've ever made a choice that cost you something you didn't tell anyone about, subscribe before part 2. The boy's father is already on his way, and he is going to find out exactly what she didn't say. The lights came at 23 minutes. The ambulance moved through the whiteout, and 2 paramedics hit the alley and stopped. Really stopped when they saw the full picture. A woman, heavily pregnant, kneeling in the snow, coat on the child, arms locked around him like she had decided, at some point in the last 23 minutes, that letting go was simply not available as an option. The younger one crouched beside her. Careful eyes. The look of someone who was already doing different math than he'd walked in with. "How long have you been out here?" 23 minutes. Her voice was still steady. "He goes first." They moved to the boy. Fast. Practiced. One of them looked back at Maya, really looked, and the careful eyes got quieter. "Ma'am." He said it gently, like he already knew. "Are you in labor?" Maya was already getting to her feet. "He goes first," she said. Northwestern Memorial Hospital smelled like disinfectant and forced warmth, the kind of heat that comes from a building trying too hard against a February that has stopped negotiating. Maya was in a bed in the maternity ward when the nurse came to check her vitals. 40 minutes post-arrival. Lily was still waiting. Contractions every 5 minutes now. Close, but not urgent enough for the room to change temperature. The nurse was efficient and kind in the way of someone who had learned to be both simultaneously, and she did not ask Maya why she had been kneeling in a blizzard without a coat. She asked instead if there was anyone Maya wanted her to call. "No," Maya said. "Thank you." The nurse made a note and left. Maya lay back and looked at the ceiling and listened to the particular silence of a maternity ward. Not quiet exactly, but contained. The sounds here had edges. A monitor beeping 3 rooms down. A door. Someone's low voice. The world reduced to a manageable frequency. She had been in Chicago 3 years, and she had been alone in Chicago for most of them. And she had made her peace with that in the specific way you make peace with things that aren't going to change soon, not by pretending they're fine, but by deciding they're workable. She had a life here. A practice she'd built from referrals and reputation and the particular credibility that comes from being the kind of consultant who answers the phone at 9 p.m. because she remembers what it felt like to need someone to answer. She knew what it cost to be far from home. She knew what it meant to navigate systems designed to make you prove yourself repeatedly. Your right to stay, your right to work, your right to exist in the space you've chosen. She helped people do it every day. She was good at it. She was also 9 months pregnant, alone, with no family in the city and a work visa renewal sitting in bureaucratic limbo, like a question the government hadn't decided to answer yet. She had not let herself think about the visa in 3 weeks. She thought about it now, briefly, then put it back. Lily first, everything else after. 3 floors below, in a corridor that smelled like the same disinfectant but felt entirely different, colder, faster, more purposeful. A nurse named Kim was telling a man the full story. She told it carefully, without drama. The way you deliver information to someone who you can already tell is going to need every detail to be accurate, because he is the kind of person who will check. Daniel Park stood with his back against the wall and his arms at his sides and listened to every word. He was a 43-year-old man who had spent 15 years building a real estate portfolio that other people described in terms he found moderately embarrassing. He had been described in financial press as decisive, relentless, difficult to read. His staff described him, more accurately, as someone who did not speak until he knew what he meant. He did not speak now. He let Kim finish. She told him about the paramedics' report. She told him about the 23 minutes. She told him about the woman who had given the location, assessed the child, tucked the phone in the boy's pocket so both of them could be heard, and never once mentioned that her water had broken 12 minutes before she found him. She told him about the contractions. The paramedics had counted them after the fact, working backwards from the timing. 5 contractions. In the alley. In the snow. Without a coat. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Her name, he said. Kim checked her notes. Maya Thornton. She delivered about 2 hours ago. Healthy girl. Both stable. Daniel said the name once, quietly. The way you say something when you're putting it somewhere specific, not just memory, but somewhere you intend to return to. He thanked Kim. He went to see his son. Elijah was awake. He was wrapped in heated blankets, his color returning in the slow way color returns to someone who has spent time somewhere it shouldn't go. He looked exhausted in the complete way, not just body, but the specific tiredness of someone who has been frightened for a long time and has only just been given permission to stop. When Daniel came through the door, something in Elijah's face broke open. He was 13. He had been trying very hard to be older than 13 for 4 years, since his mother died, since the grief in his father's house became something nobody named, but everybody navigated, since he learned that being easy was a form of love he could offer when he didn't know what else to give. But when Daniel sat on the edge of the bed and put his hand against the side of his son's face, Elijah stopped trying to be older than 13 and cried. Daniel didn't say anything. He just stayed there, his hand on his son's face. The particular stillness of a man who has learned, through significant personal cost, that silence can be the right response. After a while, Elijah asked, "Where is she?" "Who?" "The woman." He paused. "She told me her name." I don't remember." "Where is she?" "She's here. She just had her baby." Elijah went still in a different way than before. Not the stillness of exhaustion, the stillness of something landing. "She was pregnant?" "Yes." She didn't tell them. It wasn't a question. He said it the way you say something you already knew, that you've been carrying since you half heard it. That has just been confirmed. "No," Daniel said. "She didn't." Elijah closed his eyes. "She breathed the whole time. I could hear it. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't." He stopped. His jaw tightened in a way that was, suddenly, very like his father. "I couldn't say anything yet." Daniel looked at his son. There was something working in him quietly, something he had not felt in 4 years, or possibly longer. A specific quality of being confronted with something you have no framework for and knowing, with complete certainty, that your existing frameworks are not going to be sufficient. He filed it. He stayed present. Later that night, he made a single phone call. His chief of staff, Ryu Tiong picked up on the second ring. "I need you to find out what Maya Thornton needs," Daniel said. "Medical, housing, the baby, anything that's sitting wrong. Handle it before she wakes up enough to say no." A pause. "Tonight. Tonight." He hung up. He stood in the corridor outside his son's room and looked at nothing in particular for a long moment. Then he went back inside and sat beside his son until Elijah fell asleep, which took 11 minutes, which was about 9 minutes faster than it had taken since Una died. The kind of person still watching at this point isn't looking for entertainment. You already know that. You're looking for something true, a story that earns what it asks you to feel. If this channel is where you find that, subscribe before part 3. Because Maya is about to wake up and find out what Daniel Park decided about her life while she was sleeping. And she is going to have something to say about it. Maya was discharged on a Tuesday. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving Chicago with the specific aftermath of a serious blizzard. Everything muffled, everything gray-white. The city moving at 3/4 speed like it was still deciding whether the storm was really finished. The kind of morning that made the inside of a car feel like the only warm thing left in the world. She had not planned on a car. She had planned on a cab, the way she always planned on a cab, practically, without sentimentality, because Lily needed to get home warm and Maya's body was 2 days post-delivery and the snow was still on the ground. She had the app open. She was ready. The car was already there. Black. Clean. A driver who stepped out when he saw her and said, simply, "Miss Thornton," like this was an arrangement rather than a coincidence. Maya looked at the car for a moment. Then she looked at Lily, bundled against her chest in the carrier, 2 days old and already deeply uninterested in the cold. She got in. The apartment was warm when she unlocked the door. That was the first thing, not the temperature of the building, which was always adequate, but the specific warmth of a space that has been prepared. Someone had been here. The heat was set 2 degrees higher than her usual. The kind of adjustment you make when you know someone is coming home with a newborn. She stood in the doorway. The kitchen shelf was stocked. Not generically, not the way someone stocks a shelf when they're guessing. The produce was the specific kind she bought at the Southside Market on Saturdays. The bread was from the bakery on North Clark she had mentioned once, in passing, to a client who'd asked about the neighborhood. There was a box of Rooibos tea, her brand, her specific blend, sitting on the counter like it had always been there. Maya put Lily down in the bassinet, came back to the shelf, looked at it the way she looked at documents that didn't add up. On the table, a card. Clean handwriting. Formal without being cold. "Please contact me if anything is missing or incorrect. Ryu Tiong." A number. She picked up the phone. "Who authorized the food?" she said when he answered. "Ms. Thornton." His voice was measured. "Prepared. The standing instruction is that you should not have to ask for anything during your recovery." "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," he said. "You didn't." The silence between them had a shape to it. She recognized the shape. It was the shape of someone who has been briefed, who knows more than they're saying, who is waiting to see which direction she goes. "I need to speak to Mr. Park," she said. "Not through you. Directly. I need him to hear something from me." A pause. "I'll arrange it." She spent the next 3 days learning to be a mother in the specific way you learn anything that cannot be practiced in advance, by doing it wrong and correcting and doing it again, by sleeping in fragments, by understanding for the first time what it meant to love something so completely that the love itself was a form of exposure. Lily was small, deliberate. She had opinions about temperature and sound and the exact angle at which she preferred to be held, and she communicated these opinions with a precision that Maya found, despite everything, deeply funny. "You're already negotiating," she thought, on the second night, at 3 a.m., with Lily against her chest and the city quiet outside. "You're going to be fine." She believed it. She had not expected to believe it so quickly, but there it was, settled and certain, underneath everything else. She also had a visa renewal pending, and hospital bills she hadn't looked at yet. and a practice she'd been away from for 3 days that was going to need her attention, and a man she'd never met who had apparently decided, while she was delivering her daughter alone in a hospital room, that her life required management. On the third day, Ryu Tian called. "Tomorrow at 2, he said. "There's a private room at the Longview Hotel on Dearborn." Mr. Park suggested somewhere neutral. He wanted you to know that was his preference. Maya noted this. Filed it. "Tell him I'll be there," she said. She wore the good coat, the replacement, purchased that morning because the original was still somewhere in the hospital system, returned from the alley with Elijah, and presumably cleaned and bagged by someone who understood it needed to go back. She wore Lily in the carrier against her chest, because Lily went where she went, and because she was not going to perform a version of herself that pretended otherwise. Daniel Park was already in the room when she arrived. He stood when she entered. She had expected someone who occupied space aggressively. The real estate developer, the decisive man of the financial press, the person who made phone calls at night that rearranged other people's lives by morning. He was quieter than that. He had the quality of someone who had learned stillness the hard way, not as a technique, but as a survival mechanism. He looked at Lily in the carrier, and something moved in his face. Quick, controlled, gone before it fully arrived. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for choosing somewhere neutral," Maya said. "I noticed." He nodded. "Please sit." She sat. She looked at him across the table and she said what she had come to say, clearly, without anger, without performance. She had not gone into that alley for him. She had not known who Elijah was. She was not a problem to be managed or a situation to be resolved. She did not want the car or the shelf or the standing instruction. She wanted to return to exactly the position she was in before the blizzard, a woman managing her own life in a city that was difficult and entirely hers. Daniel listened to every word. He did not interrupt. Then he said, "I heard you, and I want you to tell you something." He paused. That specific pause, the one that meant what came next was going to be precise. "Your visa renewal," he said. "The one that's been in limbo. It's been resolved." Maya went very still. "It was in a complicated position," he continued. "I found out and I addressed it. If you want to tell me I overstepped, I'll accept that. The work is done and cannot be undone." He looked at her directly. "Your status in this country is no longer under pressure." The refusal Maya had organized sat in her chest with nowhere to go. She had come here with everything prepared, every boundary named, every line drawn, and he had moved the target. Maya looked at him for a long time. The room was quiet in the specific way of rooms designed for conversations that cannot happen anywhere else. Double-glazed windows, no street noise, neutral walls, the kind of furniture that communicates nothing about anyone. A room built to give two people nowhere to hide except behind what they actually meant. "That was a very significant thing to do without asking," she said. "Yes," he said. "It was." She waited for the justification, the explanation, the architecture of reasons that powerful people build around decisions they've already made. It didn't come. He sat with the admission the way he sat with everything, still, without apology, without performance. "I need you to understand something," Maya said. "My life is not available for decisions that don't involve me. I understand that now. You understood it before. You made the call anyway." He didn't flinch. "I did." The honesty was disarming in a way she hadn't prepared for. She had prepared for defense, for the measured justification of a man who believed his resources made him right. She had not prepared for someone who looked at what he'd done and said yes and waited. "Going forward," she said carefully, "I need you to ask me before you approach any line that involves my life or my daughter's life. Not your assistant. You." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm not always good at seeing lines other people have built. I am trying to see yours." Lily made a small sound in the carrier. Both of them looked at her. A reflex, simultaneous, and then both of them looked away in the same moment, aware of what the reflex had revealed. "Elijah wants to visit," Maya said. "I told him he could." Something shifted in Daniel's face. Not surprise. Something quieter than surprise. The specific expression of a man receiving information he had hoped for and did not expect. "I know," he said. "He hasn't stopped talking about it." She stood. He stood. She left. She walked out into the cold Chicago afternoon with Lily warm against her chest, and carried with her the particular feeling of someone who had gone somewhere prepared to refuse everything and come back holding something she had not planned to accept. Grace Hartley found out about the meeting on a Wednesday. Not from Daniel. From Ryu Tiong, who mentioned it in the context of scheduling. The way you mention something you assume everyone already knows. He assumed Grace knew because Daniel told Grace everything. He was wrong about that, and he understood it the moment the quality of Grace's silence changed on the other end of the phone. "I see," she said. 2 words. Perfectly controlled. She ended the call and sat for a moment at her desk. Grace was 46. She had spent her adult life in the specific labor of being indispensable to her firm, to her family, to Daniel after Una died, to Elijah in the 4 years since, in the particular way of a woman who loves fiercely and has learned that fierce love requires useful love to survive. She had been the one who organized Una's affairs. She had been the one who sat with Elijah in the weeks after, who learned which television programs he could tolerate and which ones made the grief surface without warning. She had been the one who identified which teachers at his school understood him and which ones needed a phone call. She had built something. It was real. It mattered. And now there was a woman she had never met who had spent 23 minutes in a blizzard with Daniel's son and come out of it with access to both of them that Grace had spent 4 years earning. She opened her laptop. She started building a file. 2 days later, Grace drove to Maya's neighborhood. She did not go in. She parked on the street across from the building and sat with the engine off and the file on the passenger seat beside her. It was a thin file. 2 days of research, efficient and targeted, the kind of research you conduct when you are trying to find the thing that doesn't fit. The inconsistency, the gap between the presented version and the real one. The file had no inconsistency. Maya Adise Thornton, 32, born in Peckham, South London. Mother a retired nurse. Father a secondary school history teacher. Immigrated to Chicago on a work visa 3 years ago. Built an immigration consultancy from referrals and reputation. No debt beyond standard practice overhead. No record. No gaps in the timeline that didn't have straightforward explanations. The pregnancy was unplanned. A relationship that ended before Maya knew she was pregnant. A man who was informed and who had, in Grace's assessment of what the research implied, made his position clear by his absence. Maya had not pursued it. She had simply continued building her life and incorporated Lily into it without apparent crisis. Grace looked at this file and understood that it described someone she could not find fault with. She sat in the car for 20 minutes. She thought about Una, about the last time she saw her, the week before the birth, when everything was fine and going to stay fine, when Grace had been brisk and practical and had not said the thing she should have said, which was simply, "I love you. I'm glad you're in this family." She had not said it because there would be time. There was always going to be time. She picked up the file, put it back down. She started the engine and drove away. The file stayed on the passenger seat. Elijah came on a Thursday. He knocked. Maya opened the door. He was wearing a coat built for actual winter, a significant improvement from the last time she'd seen him, and he was holding a small package in both hands with the focused care of someone transporting something important. "My father knows I'm here," he said. "He's downstairs." She stepped back from the door. He came in and sat in the chair by the sofa and looked at Lily in the bassinet with an expression Maya recognized. She had worn it herself in the first hours. The specific expression of someone understanding for the first time that a person can be this small and this complete simultaneously. "Can I hold her?" Maya lifted Lily and placed her in his arms. He held her the way he'd held everything important in his life, with total focus, no performance, the stillness of someone who has decided this is the only thing happening right now. Lily settled immediately. Her particular fussiness, The opinions about temperature and angle and sound went quiet. They sat like that for a while. The Thursday afternoon light through the window, low and clear. The specific Chicago winter light that has no warmth but plenty of clarity. She knows you, Maya said. It wasn't quite true yet. Lily was 9 days old and knew very little about anything in the categorical sense, but it was true in the way that mattered. Elijah didn't say anything. He looked down at Lily's face. Then, I brought something. He nodded toward the package on the sofa. It's for her. Maya opened it. Inside was a small hand-painted card. She could tell immediately he had made it himself. The care in it, the slight imperfection of the lettering, the kind of effort that cannot be purchased. In the center of the card, painted in both English and Korean, was a word. Lily. Maya went completely still. Did I tell you her name? She asked. Her voice was careful. She was almost certain she hadn't. She had introduced herself when Elijah arrived, told him the baby's name, but the card had been made before today. She could tell from the paint, dried and settled. He had made this before he came. You told me, he said. I didn't tell you until today. Elijah was quiet for a moment. He kept his eyes on Lily. You told me before, he said. In the alley. He paused. I don't think you knew you were saying it. The room went still. Not the peaceful still, the still before something breaks open. Maya looked at the card in her hands. The name in 2 languages. The slight imperfection of someone who had painted it carefully and meant every stroke. She had spoken Lily's name exactly once before the delivery. In the alley. In the snow. During a contraction so large it required everything she had. And she had gone to the thing that mattered most in order to stay present. And this boy, half-conscious, hypothermic, suspended between here and not here, had heard it. He had carried it through the hospital, and through his recovery, and through 10 days of not knowing if he would ever get to give it back. And now he was sitting in her apartment, holding her daughter whose name he had kept safe in the dark, and Maya needed to sit down. She sat down. The card sat on Maya's kitchen table for 4 days. She looked at it every morning, while the kettle boiled, while Lily fed, while the city outside went about its business in the particular way Chicago went about business in February, which was to say grimly and without apology. She looked at it and thought about a 13-year-old boy carrying a name through a blizzard in his semi-conscious mind and bringing it back to her like something recovered from a wreck. She had not planned on being moved by this. She was moved by it anyway. On the 5th day, Ryu Tian called. Ms. Thornton. His voice had a different quality than usual, still measured. But the preparation was different, the kind of preparation that means what follows has been thought about carefully and is being delivered anyway because it has to be. There's something Mr. Park believes you should know. He asked me to call rather than tell you himself because he felt you should have time to process it before speaking with him. Maya put down her tea. Tell me. Your visa renewal, Ryu said. When Mr. Park investigated its status, he discovered it hadn't simply been delayed by the standard backlog. A pause. It had been flagged. By a third party. For expedited monitoring. The kitchen was very quiet. What third party? Maya said. It was not a question. Ryu's pause was answer enough. Grace Hartley, Maya said. Yes. She did not call Daniel. She sat with it for 2 hours, Lily asleep in the bassinet, the card on the table, the tea going cold, and she let the full shape of it arrive without rushing it. This was how she handled things that required precision, not reaction. Arrival. Grace Hartley had flagged her visa before Daniel had ever made his phone call to Ryu. Before the hospital. Before the shelf and the car and the standing instruction. Grace had been watching Maya before Daniel knew Maya existed. She had built a file. She had found the visa, pending, vulnerable, the specific kind of bureaucratic exposure that a woman alone and far from home could not afford, and she had flagged it. Not resolved it. Flagged it. For monitoring. Maya understood the distinction. She worked in immigration. She knew exactly what flagging for expedited monitoring meant in practical terms. It meant the file moved to the top of a secondary review queue, which meant the timeline extended, which meant the uncertainty compounded, which meant the thing you were trying not to think about became harder to put away. Grace had not done this to help her. She had done it to watch her. Maya looked at the card on the table. Lily, 2 languages, kept safe in the dark. She thought about the 3 weeks before the blizzard when she had been managing the visa anxiety in the background of everything else. The practice, the pregnancy, the approaching birth, the city that held her future in its hands. She thought about putting it away every time it surfaced, the specific discipline of not letting fear take up more space than it was allocated. She thought about the fact that the anxiety had not been irrational, that there had been a reason it kept surfacing, that somewhere in a bureaucratic system, Grace Hartley's flag was sitting on her file, quietly extending the uncertainty, quietly applying pressure to a life Grace had decided needed monitoring. The anger arrived slowly. That was how her anger always came, not fast and hot, but slow and clarifying, the kind that doesn't cloud things but brings them into focus. She picked up the phone. She called Daniel directly. He answered on the second ring. "You knew," she said. "When did you find out?" "For days after Ryu began the investigation." His voice was steady, not defensive. "I found out what Grace had done before I resolved the visa. I resolved it first. Then I decided how to tell you." "You decided?" "Yes. You decided when I found out about something that was done to me." A silence. The specific silence of a man who knows he has done something defensible that was also wrong. "Yes," he said. "I did. I was wrong to make that decision without you." The admission landed without softening the thing underneath it. Maya had learned, in 3 years of immigration consultancy, that the most important thing a person could do when they had made a mistake at someone else's expense was to say so without making the acknowledgement about themselves. Daniel did that. She noted it. It did not resolve the anger. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to answer it without managing me." "Ask." "Did Grace know that you found out what she did?" A pause, longer than his usual ones. "No," he said. "Why not?" "Because I wanted to understand it before I addressed it. And because," he stopped, started again, "because I knew that if I confronted her immediately, she would become defensive, and the only person that serves is Grace." Maya was quiet. "She came to see me," she said, "in the hospital, before you did." "I know." She was afraid. Maya looked at the card on the table. I could see it. Fear in women who have had to fight for everything they have comes out looking like precision, like calculation, like her. She paused. "It doesn't mean she was right." "No," Daniel said quietly. "It doesn't." She did not tell him what she was going to do next. She called Ryu instead, asked him to arrange a meeting with Grace Hartley. Not through lawyers, not through Daniel, just the 2 of them. Ryu was quiet for a moment. "Miss Thornton, are you certain?" "Yes," she said. "Arrange it." She did not save him for this. She sat in her apartment after the call and held Lily and let that sentence move through her completely. She had not gone into that alley for a visa resolution or a stock shelf or a car waiting at the curb or a man who said, "I'm trying to see your lines," with the specific quality of someone who meant it. She had not gone in for any of it. She had gone in because there was a voice in the snow, and it was the only direction that made sense. And what had come after? The boy with the card, the man with the standing offer, the woman with the file. None of it was the point. None of it was what she had turned toward. But she was in it now. She was in it because Elijah came every Thursday and held Lily with the focused stillness of someone who had decided this was the most important thing in the world. She was in it because Daniel answered on the second ring and said I was wrong without making it about himself. She was in it because even Grace Hartley's fear was something she recognized, the specific fear of a woman who has built something real and can feel it shifting. She was in it, and she had not chosen it, and it was hers anyway. Lily made a sound. Maya adjusted her hold. Outside, the city went on. The opposite of alone, she thought, isn't surrounded. It's this. Someone who carries your name when you can't. My mother told me nobody wants to feel this much. That stories this raw make people look away. If she's wrong, if you're still here, heart working overtime, Needing to know what happens when Maya sits across from Grace Hartley, subscribe. Because the next part is the darkest this story gets, and it earns every second of what comes after. Grace Hartley chose the location, a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue. Public, neutral, the kind of place where precision was easier to maintain because witnesses made performance necessary. Maya noted the choice the way she noted everything Grace did, as information. She arrived first, ordered tea, sat facing the door. Grace came in at exactly the arranged time, which told Maya something. Lateness would have been power. Earliness would have been anxiety. Exactness was control, the specific control of someone who had decided in advance exactly how much of themselves they were going to give this meeting. She was smaller than Maya had expected. Not physically. Grace was composed and upright and took up appropriate space. But there was something in her that was smaller than the file and the flagging and the 4 years of fierce, indispensable love suggested. She looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had gotten very good at not showing it. She sat down. She did not order anything. "I know why you called this meeting," she said. Her diction was precise. "No contractions. I would like to say something before you do." Maya waited. Grace looked at the table. A breath. Then she looked up. "What I did to your visa was wrong," she said. "I want you to know that I knew it was wrong when I did it. I did it anyway because I was afraid and because fear in me comes out looking like action." She paused. "That is not an excuse. It is the most accurate account I can give you. The precision of it costs something." Maya could see that. The words were not practiced. They were excavated. "I know about Una," Maya said quietly. Something moved through Grace's face. Quick and deep, like a current beneath still water. "Daniel told you." "No. Elijah did. Last Thursday. He talks about her the way children talk about people who shaped them, not in grief, but in fact. She was a fact of his life, and she still is." Grace was quiet for a long time. "She would have liked you," she said finally. The words seemed to surprise her as she said them. "That is not something I find easy to say." "I know," Maya said. "I can see that." She walked home. She could have called a car. She had the number. The standing offer had not expired, and she had used it twice without guilt, which itself had been a negotiation. But she needed the cold and the movement and the specific clarity that Chicago winter provided when you stopped fighting it and let it do what it did. She walked and she thought about Grace sitting across from her with the file she had built and the fear she had acted on and the admission she had made. And she thought about what it cost a woman like Grace to say, "I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway." She thought about Una, who had died 4 years ago in a hospital with all of Daniel's resources unable to change the outcome. And she thought about what that had done to the people who loved her. How grief redistributed itself. How it found new shapes in people. She thought about her own mother in Peckham, who did not know about the blizzard because Maya had not told her, who did not know about Daniel or Grace or Elijah, because Maya had been protecting her from the size of what the last 3 weeks had been. She was tired. Not the tiredness of new motherhood, though that was present too. The fragment sleep, the constant calibration of another person's needs. This was a different tiredness. The tiredness of someone who had been managing alone for so long that the muscles required for it had stopped hurting and started simply being load-bearing. Permanent. Structural. She had built her life in Chicago to be entirely hers. She had done it deliberately, carefully, with the specific intention of never being in a position where someone else's decisions could reach into her life and move things without asking. And in the space of 3 weeks, a blizzard had dismantled that architecture completely. Not maliciously, not even, in most cases, unkindly, but completely. She fed Lily at midnight, sitting in the chair by the window with the city below doing what it always did. Indifferent, magnificent, deeply uninterested in her particular difficulty. Lily fed and then did not sleep. She was alert in the particular way she got sometimes in the night hours, looking at Maya with the focused attention of someone taking inventory. "I know," Maya said. "I know." She was not sure what she was responding to. It didn't matter. She looked at her daughter, at the specific reality of her, small and complete, and already, somehow, herself, and she felt the full weight of what she had done in that alley. Not the heroism of it, not the cost of it, the irrevocability of it. She had turned toward a voice in the snow, and in doing so had turned toward everything that came with it. The boy, the father, the aunt who flagged her visa out of fear, the constellation of people she had not chosen and could not now unchoose. She had not known any of that was in the alley. She had just known there was a voice. She thought about her mother again. She thought, I should call her. She thought, I don't know what I would say. She thought, I am so tired of knowing what to say. Lily fell asleep at 1 a.m. Maya put her down carefully, came back to the chair, sat in the dark. On the table, the card. Lily, 2 languages. The slight imperfection of someone who had cared about every stroke. She looked at it for a long time. A boy who had been dying had held her daughter's name safe in the dark and brought it back to her. A man who moved through the world like a problem solver had stopped, genuinely stopped, and said, I'm trying to see your lines. A woman who had acted out of fear had sat across the table and said, I knew it was wrong without flinching from it. None of these people were what she had expected. None of this was what she had planned. This is what it costs, she thought, to let people be more than what you expected. She was not sure she knew how to pay that cost. She had spent 3 years learning not to need payment in the first place, learning to be self-sufficient and complete and wholly, carefully hers. She did not have a framework for this, for people who kept turning out to be more than the file suggested. Outside, a train, distant. The low sound Chicago made at 1 a.m. when it was simply going about its business. Inside, the card on the table. Inside, her daughter breathing. Inside, Maya sitting in the dark, not managing for once. Just sitting, just present, just tired in the way that means something is shifting and you don't yet know into what. She picked up her phone. She did not call Daniel. She did not call Ryu. She did not call her mother. She opened her contacts and scrolled to a name she had not called in 6 months, a friend from her first year in Chicago, a woman named Adiz who had moved back to London and who Maya had let the distance take without fighting it. She looked at the name for a long time. Then she put the phone down. Not tonight, she thought, but soon. Something small, almost invisible. The specific quality of a person who has been alone for a long time and has just, quietly, decided they don't want to be. Not because anyone rescued them. Because they looked at their life in the dark and decided it was worth more company than they'd been giving it. She called her mother on a Sunday. Not because she had figured out what to say. Because she had stopped waiting to figure it out and decided that some conversations didn't require preparation. They required the phone in your hand and the number dialed and the willingness to be whatever you actually were when the call connected. Her mother answered on the 3rd ring. Maya, just her name. The specific way her mother said it. 2 syllables carrying the full weight of I knew you would call when you were ready, and I have been ready since before you were. Maya sat down on the sofa. Lily was asleep in the bassinet. The Sunday morning light came through the window at a low angle. That particular Chicago winter light. No warmth, but plenty of clarity. I have something to tell you, Maya said. Several things. I should have called sooner. Yes, her mother said. You should have. No performance of hurt. No escalation. Just the plain truth delivered with the precision of a woman who had spent 32 years loving someone who managed alone and had decided that accurate was kinder than gentle. Maya told her everything. The blizzard. The alley. Elijah. The 23 minutes. The contractions she had managed in silence while holding someone else's child. The delivery. Alone. A nurse holding her hand. Lily arriving small and perfect and entirely herself. She told it plainly. Without the management she usually applied to information before she gave it to people she loved. She just told it. Her mother was quiet through all of it. When Maya finished, there was a long silence. Not the silence of someone processing. The silence of someone who had already processed and was now deciding which of the available true things to say first. You called the ambulance, her mother said finally. Yes. You held him. Yes. You didn't tell them about the labor. No. Another silence. Maya Adiz Thornton. Her full name. All three parts. The specific register her mother used when something was too large for ordinary address. You held a dying child in a blizzard while you were in labor, and you did not tell a single person. He needed. I know what he needed. I was a nurse for 31 years. A pause. I also know what you needed. And I know you didn't ask for it. And I know you think those two things are separate. Her voice was steady, not angry. Something more precise than angry. They are not separate, my love. They have never been separate. Maya said nothing. You are allowed to need things, her mother said. You have always been allowed. I don't know where you got the idea that you weren't. The words arrived without drama and landed with the specific weight of true things said plainly by someone who had earned the right to say them. Maya sat on the sofa in the Sunday morning light and felt something shift. Not dramatically, not with the quality of revelation, but with the quiet certainty of a structure that has been under pressure for a long time finally being given permission to be something other than a wall. There's more, Maya said. I assumed, her mother said. Keep going. She told her about Daniel, about Ryu and the shelf and the car and the visa, about Grace and the file and the flagging and the coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, about Elijah coming every Thursday with Lily in his arms, perfectly still, the most focused 13-year-old she had ever seen. She told her about the card. Her mother was quiet for a moment after the card. He painted it himself? Yes. Her name. In 2 languages. Yes. And he heard it in the alley. Yes. Her mother made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a sob, but contained elements of both. The sound of someone who has been presented with something so precisely right that the only available response is to feel it fully. Baby, she said, that boy carried your daughter's name through a blizzard in his unconscious mind and brought it back to you. A pause. I don't know what you're going to do with all of this, but I know you're not supposed to do it alone. And I think you know that too, or you wouldn't have called. Maya looked at the bassinet, at Lily, asleep, her small chest rising and falling with the particular authority of someone who had decided breathing was worth doing thoroughly. I don't know how to let people stand beside me, Maya said, without feeling like I'm giving something up. I know, her mother said. You learned it somewhere you shouldn't have. And unlearning it is going to take longer than a phone call. A beat. But you called. That's the first thing. She stayed on the phone for 2 hours. They talked about Lily, her weight, her opinions, the angle at which she preferred to be held. They talked about London and Chicago and the specific loneliness of building something in a city that doesn't owe you anything. They talked about Maya's father, who had cried when he heard Lily's name and had told no one except his wife. When she hung up, the light had shifted. The low winter angle had moved across the floor and reached the bassinet and was now sitting on Lily's hands, which were open, the way babies' hands are open when they are completely at peace. Maya looked at her daughter's open hands. She picked up her phone. She opened her contacts. She scrolled to Daniel's number, not Ryu's. His. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she typed, I think we need to talk. Not about logistics. Just talk. If you're available this week. She put the phone down. 40 seconds later it buzzed. Tuesday. Wherever you choose. I'll be there. You stayed through the darkest part of this story. You stayed through Grace and the file and the midnight and the mirror. The climax is coming, and everything Maya has been carrying is about to be named out loud for the first time. Subscribe. Let's finish this together. Because what Daniel says next is going to change what you understood about every scene that came before it. She chose a place she knew. A small restaurant on North Clark. The kind that had been there long enough to stop trying to be anything other than what it was. Worn wooden tables. No music loud enough to matter. The specific smell of somewhere that had fed people through difficult winters for 20 years and intended to keep doing it. She arrived first. She always arrived first. Daniel came in from the cold and stopped when he saw her. That specific stop, the one that meant he was taking something in before he spoke. He sat down across from her. No staff, no Ryu, no one waiting outside with a phone. Just the two of them and the restaurant doing its quiet work around them. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for asking," he said. The difference between those two sentences, what they meant in the context of everything that had come before, sat between them like a third presence at the table. They talked for a long time before anything important was said. This was, Maya had come to understand, how Daniel operated. Not evasion, but sequence. He needed to establish the ground before he walked on it. He asked about Lily. She told him about the open hands and the winter light, and something in his face did the thing it did when Lily was mentioned, quick, deep, gone before it fully arrived. He asked about her practice. She told him about the case she'd returned to that week. A family from Eritrea, 2 children, a father who had been waiting 14 months for a review that should have taken 6. She told him what she was going to do about it. He listened the way he listened to everything, completely, without interruption, without the half-present quality of someone constructing their response while you spoke. "You're good at it," he said. Not a compliment performing itself. An observation. "I know what it costs," she said. "That helps." He was quiet for a moment. Una knew what it cost, he said. She was a pediatric nurse. She said the same thing once. That knowing the cost was the whole qualification. It was the first time he had said her name to Maya directly. The name landed in the space between them, and neither of them moved. "Elijah told me about her," Maya said carefully. "Not the facts. The feel of her. The way she's still present and how he moves through the world." Daniel looked at the table. "She died 4 years ago. In childbirth." He said it plainly. The way you say something you have said to yourself 10,000 times and have finally made peace with saying aloud. She had everything. Every resource. The best hospital. The best team. A pause. It didn't matter. Maya said nothing. She let it be what it was. "When Kim told me what you had done," he said, "I went completely still. Not because of the 23 minutes or the contractions or any of the things that were extraordinary about what you did." He stopped. Started again. "I went still because Una died in a hospital with every possible resource, and you were alone in an alley with none of them, and you chose my son over yourself without a second thought." His voice was steady, but only just. "The last thing Una said to me that I have never told anyone," he said, "was this: don't let Elijah grow up thinking love has to be earned." He looked at Maya directly. He has spent 4 years earning it, trying to be smaller, easier, less of a burden. I did not know how to stop it. I did not know how to show him something different. The restaurant went about its business around them. "And then you held him in the snow," Daniel said. "A woman who didn't know his name, who owed him nothing, who had every reason to keep walking." A pause. "You showed him in 23 minutes what I couldn't show him in 4 years." Maya felt the full weight of it arrive. Not the heroism, not the cost, the meaning of it. What it had given Elijah. What it had given back to Daniel. The specific thing that had happened in that alley that she had not planned and could not have predicted and had been living inside ever since without fully naming. "You put him first," Daniel said. "I need you to know I see what that cost. And I need you to know," he stopped. The pause was longer than usual. "I am going to spend whatever time you allow me trying to be worth knowing." She looked at him across the table. This man who moved through the world solving problems with resources and had spent 4 years unable to solve the problem that mattered most. This man who had said her name once and filed it somewhere specific and had been, since that moment, trying, imperfectly, overreachingly, genuinely, to see her lines. She thought about the alley, the brick, the fixed point she had found when everything else was movement and cold, and the specific demand of managing alone. She thought about her mother's voice on Sunday morning. "You called. That's the first thing." She thought about Elijah's card on her kitchen table. 2 languages. A name kept safe in the dark. "I need to tell you something," she said. He waited. "I have spent 3 years building a life that didn't require anyone to show up. Not because I don't want people, Because I learned, somewhere, early, in ways I'm still identifying, that needing people was a form of exposure I couldn't afford. She looked at him directly. I came to Chicago to build something entirely mine. And I did. And it is mine. And I am not giving that up. I know, he said. But, she paused. There is a difference between a life that is mine and a life that is only mine. I have been confusing those two things for 3 years. A beat, possibly longer. The restaurant was quiet around them. Elijah comes every Thursday, she said. I know. I want that to continue. So does he. And you. She held his gaze. I need you to ask me. Every time. Before you act. Before you arrange. Before you decide anything that touches my life or Lily's. You ask me first. Not Ryu. You. Yes, he said. No pause this time. Immediate. The answer already there. I mean it. I know you do, he said. That's why I'm not qualifying it. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, there's a place on the south side that does the best jollof rice in Chicago. My client told me about it. I haven't been yet because I haven't had anyone to go with. Something shifted in Daniel's face. Not quite a smile. Something quieter and more specific than a smile. The expression of a man being offered something he had not expected and understanding exactly what it was. When he said, Saturday, she said, Elijah comes Thursday. He can tell me if you're worth taking to dinner. The smile arrived then. Small. Completely genuine. That's a reasonable standard, he said. Outside, Chicago was doing what it always did. Moving forward, indifferent, magnificent, deeply committed to its own business. The cold had not relented. February had not finished making its point. Inside, 2 people sat across a worn wooden table and did not resolve anything or define anything or put a name to the specific thing that had been building since a woman said a name twice in a dark corridor and a man filed it somewhere he intended to return to. They simply sat across from each other and let it be what it was, which was not nothing, which was, in fact, the beginning of something neither of them had a word for yet. But words, Maya had learned, were the last thing, not the first. The first thing was the turn toward the voice in the snow. Everything else was what you built after. If something just broke open in you, that's the whole point. That's why this story exists. Subscribe, not just for the next one, but for the person scrolling tonight who needs proof that turning toward something instead of away can change everything. You could be the reason they find it. Lily turned 1 on a Thursday, which meant Elijah was already there when the afternoon light came through the window at its low winter angle. That particular Chicago light, no warmth but plenty of clarity, and fell across the small cake Maya had made herself, slightly uneven on one side, completely right. Grace came. She arrived with a gift wrapped in brown paper and stood in the doorway for a moment before Maya stepped back to let her in. They were not friends. They were something more specific than that. 2 women who had sat across a table from each other and told the truth and were now, carefully and without pretense, building something that didn't have a name yet but was real. Grace looked around the apartment, at Elijah in the chair with Lily on his lap, showing her something on a piece of paper with the focused patience of someone who had decided a 1-year-old was a perfectly reasonable audience. At the card on the shelf, still there, Lily in 2 languages, slightly faded now from a year of being where it belonged. Something moved in Grace's face. She looked away before it finished arriving. Daniel came last. He knocked. Maya opened the door. He was holding something small, a board book, thick pages, the kind built for hands that were still learning what hands were for. He had not brought flowers or wine or anything that would have made the moment bigger than it was. He had brought something for Lily. Maya noted this the way she noted everything he did now, as information and as evidence that he was learning. You found it, she said. She had mentioned the book once, in passing, 3 weeks ago. I wrote it down, he said. She stepped back from the door. They gathered in the small living room. Not a crowd, just the specific people who had found their way here through a blizzard and a file and a card and a phone call and a Tuesday dinner that had become Saturday dinners, and then something without a schedule, something that simply happened because it was where everyone ended up. Elijah held Lily while she reached for the single candle on the cake. She was focused on it with the complete intensity of someone who had identified a problem, the flame, and was developing a theory about it. Maya stood on one side of the room. Daniel stood on the other. They were not together, but they were not apart. They were in the specific place that comes after two people have told each other the truth and decided that the truth was worth staying for. Not resolved, not defined, but present. Both of them present. That was the thing. Neither of them had left. Maya looked across the room at Elijah, at his face bent over Lily's, at the focused care of him, at the boy who had been trying to earn love for 4 years and had, somewhere in the last 12 months, quietly stopped trying and simply started being. She thought about the alley, the brick, the fixed point. She looked for it now, the old reflex, the need to find something external to anchor against when everything was movement. It wasn't there. She didn't need it. She was the fixed point. Later, after the cake and after Grace had left with something slightly less careful in her posture than when she arrived, after Elijah had gone downstairs to where Daniel was waiting, Maya sat in the chair by the window with Lily asleep against her chest. The city outside was going about its business. A train, a distant horn. Chicago, indifferent and magnificent, deeply uninterested in the specific miracle that had happened inside this apartment over the course of 1 year. She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth, not managing, not anchoring, just breathing, just present. Lily's weight against her chest, warm, real, entirely hers, and the quiet of an apartment that was still hers, completely, undeniably hers, and was also, now, full. Before the next story, a question. Have you ever turned towards something when every practical reason said keep walking? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And wherever you're watching from tonight, drop your city below. You'd be amazed how far these stories travel. If this one found you at the right moment, subscribe. There's someone else out there who needs it to find them too. You could be the reason it does. Until the next one, take care of your heart.